Breaking news and a story that has shaken not just one family, but an entire community. Tonight's case is about baby Emmanuel Haro, a child whose disappearance was first reported as a desperate kidnapping. For days, the public was asked to search, pray, and hope. But now, shocking revelations show that this was no abduction. It was something far darker. Authorities say Emmanuel's story has shifted from a missing persons case to a full-blown homicide investigation. What began as a mother's tearful 911 call is now exposing disturbing layers of family secrets, a history of abuse and systemic failures that may have allowed this tragedy to happen. This case matters because it's not just about one baby, it's about the cracks in a justice system that failed to protect the most vulnerable, about the way social media shapes public perception, and about how communities rally when truth begins to unravel. Stay with me as we unpack the Emmanuel Haro case, separating fact from rumor, and uncovering what really happened. And before we begin, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe for in-depth true crime coverage, where every detail is researched and every voice is heard. On the night of August 14th, a frantic 911 call came in from Yucaipa, California. On the line was Rebecca Haro, the mother of baby Emmanuel. Through tears, she told dispatchers that a stranger had attacked her in a shopping center parking lot, violently pulling her infant son from her arms and disappearing into the night. Within hours, the case exploded. Flyers went up, local news stations broadcast urgent alerts, and the community was mobilized. Neighbors lit candles, volunteers searched alleys and fields, and prayers for baby Emmanuel spread across TikTok and YouTube. At first, it looked like a classic child abduction, one that could happen to any family, but investigators quickly noticed cracks in Rebecca's story. Surveillance footage from the parking lot failed to show the alleged attack. Eyewitnesses couldn't confirm her account, and within just a few days, her willingness to cooperate with detectives seemed to fade. The red flags kept piling up. Police interviews revealed inconsistencies in timelines. Family members' statements didn't quite align, and investigators began to quietly shift their focus, from a frantic search for a missing child to a homicide investigation. By August 22nd, just over a week after the 911 call, the shocking turn came. Both Rebecca Haro and her husband Jake Haro were arrested. They weren't just suspected of lying to police, they were booked on suspicion of murder and filing a false report. What began as a community united in hope was now shattered by betrayal. The very parents who had cried for their missing baby were now at the center of a criminal investigation. To truly grasp the horror of baby Emmanuel's case, we need to look at what came before. Because this was not the first time Jake Haro's name crossed paths with child abuse. Back in 2018, Jake was accused and later convicted of violently abusing his infant daughter. The details were grim. She was left with catastrophic injuries, her tiny body broken, her brain forever damaged. Doctors concluded she would live with cerebral palsy for the rest of her life. For many, that should have been the end of Jake's freedom. A crime of that magnitude often leads to long prison sentences. But in what prosecutors now call a tragic miscarriage of justice, Jake received what amounted to a slap on the wrist. Instead of prison time, he was given probation and a work release sentence. That meant he was allowed to work by day, and then return home to his family each night, free to live almost as if nothing had happened. Prosecutors at the time objected. They argued he was a danger. But the court's decision stood. And because of that leniency, Jake Haro walked out of the courtroom, not in handcuffs, but in street clothes. Years later, looking back through the lens of Emmanuel's disappearance, the outrage is palpable. One district attorney didn't mince words. That decision was absolutely outrageous. He should have been in prison. This is where the story takes on a chilling irony. While Jake's daughter lived with permanent disabilities from his abuse, the justice system treated him as someone who could be rehabilitated. He was allowed to build a family again. He and Rebecca went on to have more children, Emmanuel among them, and yet, history repeated itself. Another baby, another tragedy. Only this time, the outcome was even worse. Emmanuel didn't survive. Authorities have since removed another child from their custody, a sibling, placing them under state protection. The cycle of abuse is finally being interrupted, but only after another innocent life was lost. This is the blind spot in the justice system, a failure to see the danger for what it was, a failure to protect the vulnerable. And it raises the haunting question: if Jake had been behind bars where he belonged, would baby Emmanuel still be alive today? As investigators dug deeper, what they uncovered was even more disturbing than a staged kidnapping. According to prosecutors, baby Emmanuel was already dead before his parents ever picked up the phone to call 911. Court documents detail evidence of sustained child abuse inside the Haro household. The abuse wasn't a single incident, it was repeated, escalating, and ultimately fatal. Forensic investigators pieced together Emmanuel's final days, and what they found suggested that this baby's suffering went on long before his disappearance was ever reported. And yet, despite the charges, despite the mounting evidence, there is still one piece missing: Emmanuel himself. His tiny body has not been recovered. Detectives have searched fields, rivers, and desolate stretches of land near the family's home. Specialized cadaver dogs have been deployed, and drones have scanned open terrain. But as of today, no remains have been found. That haunting absence leaves the case not just a tragedy, but a mystery still in motion. This uncertainty has created fertile ground for rumors and viral claims online. TikTok videos and YouTube live streams have circulated wild theories that Jake Haro confessed to the murder while in custody, or that he led investigators directly to Emmanuel's grave. Some creators even shared alleged breaking news that remains had been located. But the district attorney's office has firmly debunked these claims. In a statement, prosecutors said, "There has been no confession made in jail. At this point, Emmanuel's body has not been recovered." Still, the speculation hasn't stopped, and every day new videos add fuel to an already painful fire. This leaves Emmanuel's story in a cruel limbo. His parents are accused of killing him, the evidence of abuse is overwhelming, and yet his body remains missing. For the community, that absence cuts deep. For investigators, it's the missing piece that could lock the case airtight in court, and for those who loved Emmanuel, it means there has been no chance to mourn, no place to grieve, no closure. On September 4th, the Haros were back in the public eye, not as desperate parents pleading for help, but as defendants standing in court. Before a packed Riverside County courtroom, Jake and Rebecca Haro each entered a plea of not guilty to charges of murder and filing a false police report. The tension in the room was palpable. Family members of the victims, advocates for missing children, and members of the press all watched as the couple stood silently before the judge. Each was ordered held on $1 million bail, a staggering figure that reflects the gravity of the accusations and the potential risk if they were released. Rebecca Haro quickly secured a high-profile defense attorney, Jeff Moore. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Moore previously represented one of the infamous Turpin parents, the California couple convicted of imprisoning and abusing their 13 children in a case that shocked the world. Moore's involvement signals that this trial is about to become a media spectacle. His legal strategy in past cases has centered on challenging procedure, shifting blame, and raising questions about mental health and family dysfunction. Many are already asking, will he attempt the same here? On the other side, prosecutors have made their position crystal clear. They intend to focus on three pillars: the Haro's history of child abuse, including Jake's prior conviction that left one child permanently disabled; the false kidnapping narrative, which they argue was a deliberate attempt to mislead investigators and buy time; and the most haunting piece, the absence of Emmanuel's remains. Prosecutors believe this missing element will not only highlight the couple's deception, but also emphasize the brutal reality that the Haros deprived their community of closure. As the legal chess game begins, the case is already shaping up to be one of the most closely watched trials in Southern California. Legal analysts warn that without a body, the defense could seize on the uncertainty, raising doubts about cause of death, or even whether Emmanuel is truly gone. But prosecutors counter that the combination of forensic evidence, testimony, and history of abuse forms a picture that is impossible to ignore. The stakes could not be higher. At the end of this trial, two possible outcomes loom: either a conviction that brings some measure of justice for baby Emmanuel, or a defense that manages to raise enough doubt to fracture the case. For Emmanuel's community, it's a question not just of law, but of accountability. As the Haro case unfolded, it wasn't just investigators and attorneys shaping the narrative, it was the internet. TikTok, YouTube, and live stream communities erupted with speculation. Within hours of the parents' arrests, countless creators jumped in, some offering thoughtful commentary, but many chasing clicks with sensational claims. One of the loudest voices came from live streamers like JLR Investigates, who broadcasted near-daily updates, often amplifying unverified tips. The most explosive rumor that Jake Haro had confessed in jail, even allegedly leading investigators to baby Emmanuel's remains. That claim spread like wildfire across social media platforms, with videos gaining tens of thousands of views in a matter of hours. But when pressed directly, the district attorney's office shut the door firmly on the story. Their statement was unambiguous: there is no confession made in jail. There has been no recovery of Emmanuel's remains. This clash between official fact and viral speculation is more than just background noise. It highlights the danger of misinformation in true crime coverage. Families desperate for answers are often re-traumatized by these false narratives. Investigators are flooded with misleading tips, stretching already thin resources. And viewers, well-meaning people who genuinely want to help, end up confused, frustrated, and sometimes misled into distrusting legitimate authorities. It's a reminder that in today's digital age, the court of public opinion often moves faster than the court of law. While live streamers and TikTok creators can amplify awareness, they can also distort the story, creating a storm where truth struggles to break through. For the Haro case, one thing has become painfully clear: fact-checking is not optional, it's critical. In a tragedy where a child's life was lost and justice is on the line, separating evidence from rumor isn't just journalism, it's responsibility. The arrest of Jake and Rebecca Haro didn't just spark headlines, it ignited a firestorm of public outrage. For the people of Riverside County and beyond, Emmanuel's disappearance wasn't just another case. It was the story of a baby who never stood a chance because the very system built to protect him had already failed. Community voices grew louder by the day. Outside the courthouse, parents held handmade signs that read "Justice for Emmanuel" and "No more second chances for abusers." Online, TikTok and YouTube lit up with creators posting emotional videos, demanding accountability. Hashtags like #JusticeForEmmanuel and #Emmanuel'sLaw began trending, creating a groundswell of digital activism. Many spoke about their own childhood traumas, linking Emmanuel's story to a broader culture of overlooked abuse. But at the center of this outrage was one chilling fact: Jake Haro should never have been free. Back in 2018, he was convicted of violently abusing his own infant daughter, leaving her permanently disabled with cerebral palsy. Yet, instead of prison, Jake walked away with probation and work release, a punishment that many now see as a death sentence for Emmanuel. Even prosecutors have admitted it. One district attorney called that decision absolutely outrageous, adding that if Jake had been behind bars, Emmanuel would still be alive today. That single ruling, made in a courtroom years ago, is now being painted as a catastrophic failure that cost an innocent baby his life. The outrage has already sparked action. Lawmakers and advocates are pushing for reforms being dubbed Emmanuel's Law. Proposals include mandatory prison time for violent child abuse convictions, stricter reviews before abusive parents regain custody, and faster intervention from Child Protective Services. Supporters argue that if these laws had been in place earlier, Emmanuel's fate might have been very different. But beyond the laws and legal jargon, Emmanuel's story highlights something even more heartbreaking: the silence of a system stretched thin. Caseworkers overwhelmed with files, judges relying on leniency, and children, innocent, voiceless children, slipping through the cracks. Emmanuel's tragedy isn't an isolated one. It joins a haunting list of cases, like Gabriel Fernandez and Anthony Avalos, where ignored warning signs ended in devastating loss. Each case forces us to ask the same painful question: how many more children must be buried before change actually happens? This isn't just about justice in a courtroom, it's about accountability. It's about reform. And most of all, it's about making sure Emmanuel's story is not just remembered, but used as a turning point to protect the next vulnerable child from being failed the same way. The story of baby Emmanuel Haro is more than a headline. It's a haunting reminder of what happens when abuse warnings go unanswered, when judges show leniency to repeat offenders, and when the most vulnerable voices, our children, go unheard. This case forces us to confront painful truths. Emmanuel never had a chance to grow up, to laugh in a classroom, to play in a park, to simply live. His short life was shaped by cycles of abuse, neglect, and ultimately systemic failure. And while social media may amplify rumors and speculation, one thing is clear: the truth matters. It matters for Emmanuel, for his siblings, and for every child who could still be saved. In a digital age where false claims spread faster than verified facts, our responsibility is to cut through the noise. That's why we stand here, not just to retell stories, but to honor the victims, demand accountability, and shine light where darkness hides. But stories like Emmanuel's shouldn't just leave us sad, they should leave us moved to action. Maybe that means pressing for harsher sentences for abusers. Maybe it means supporting child advocacy groups. Or maybe it's as simple as refusing to scroll past the next missing child alert, knowing that the first 48 hours are always critical. And so, as this case unfolds in the courtroom and in the hearts of those who mourn, let us make sure Emmanuel's story does not fade away. Let it instead become a turning point, a push for change, and a reason to finally protect children the way they deserve. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. Please like this video so it reaches more people, share it to keep the conversation alive, and comment respectfully below. What reforms do you think could prevent tragedies like this from happening again? And of course, if you want more well-researched true crime stories that focus on truth, clarity, and justice, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. This is not just another story, it is a call to remember Emmanuel Haro and to fight for every child who still has a chance to be saved.